Hello and welcome back to e-sipnayan. For today's video, we are going to discuss how to transform parabola equations from general to standard and vice versa. But before we proceed, do not forget to hit like and subscribe so that you'll get notified once I upload new videos. The learning objective for this session is that at the end, you should be able to transform equations of parabola from general to standard and vice versa. We first recall the different parabola equations, and last video, we were able to be oriented with a different standard form of a parabola, and there are four. A parabola that opens to the right, left, up, and down. Now, we emphasized last time that for us to determine the orientation of a parabola given the standard form, we just simply identify which variable is squared and the sign of 4p. Now, we also highlighted last time that if a parabola opens to the right or to the left, the variable that is squared is y. Meanwhile, if it is a parabola that opens upward or downward, the variable that is being squared is x. Now, you're very much familiar already at this point about the standard form, but let me introduce to you the general form of a parabola that opens to the left and right, and a parabola that opens upward and downward. If it is a parabola that opens to the right or to the left, this is the general form. We have y squared plus bx plus ey plus f equals 0. Now, if you notice, the variable that is being squared here in this particular equation is still y. Then the rest will just be in the first degree. Similarly, in the general form of a parabola that opens either upward or downward, the variable that is squared is x. Now, if you are simply given with a general form, you will be having a hard time determining the orientation. That's why we need to transform the parabola from general to standard form so that we'll be very certain what the opening of the parabola is. Again, take note of the different standard form and their corresponding general form. Let's now proceed to the first example in transforming general to standard. So we have here y squared plus 12x plus 2y plus 25 equals 0. The format that we want to follow is, of course, the standard form of a parabola that opens to either left or right. So we have here a clue given in the first equation that somehow this general form will be pertaining to a parabola that opens to the right or to the left because the variable that is squared is y. Now, how do we start transforming general to standard form? It will be the same as what we did with circles. So the first thing that we need to do is to group all x's and y's. Now, since y is the one that is squared, we copy it and then we put beside it the term with y, which is 2y. So that will be y squared plus 2y. And then copy the rest of the terms since there will be no terms with similar variables as this. So we copy plus 12x plus 25 equals 0. So you first group all x's and y's, but definitely you are going to just group either the x's or y's because only one variable is squared. Now, after grouping them, the next step is, of course, we are following the format. That's why we need to isolate the variable that is squared. So, meaning, when we want to keep only on the left-hand side of the equation the variable which has square, and that will be y. So, all other terms without variable y will be transposed to the right-hand side of the equation so that we can successfully follow the format for a parabola that opens either to the right or to the left. So we copy y squared plus 2y. They will stay here on the left-hand side of the equation. Meanwhile, the rest of the terms will be transposed to the right-hand side. So that will be equal to, from positive 12x, we transpose it. That will become negative 12x. And then from positive 25, when transposed to the right-hand side of the equation, that will become negative 25. After that, the next step is to complete the square. So in all cases where you are asked to transform general to standard, you're always going to apply completing the square. And I hope you can still remember that from our discussion last time regarding circles. Now again, the formula that we need to remember in completing the square is b over 2 squared. So completing the square will only be applied on the left-hand side of the equation or to the variable that is squared. So in that case, we copy y squared, then 2y, and then we apply the formula b over 2 squared. So therefore, we are going to add plus, what is b? b is 2. Divide it by 2, and then you need to square it. And that is how you complete the square. I hope you can still remember. Then on the right-hand side of the equation, we copy negative 12x minus 25. And again, since we are talking about in an equation, whatever we add to the left-hand side of the equation, we also add to the right-hand side so that it will still be equal. So we add b over 2 squared, which is represented by 2 over 2 squared. After that, the next step is to simplify. So after you complete the square, definitely, we just need to simplify the equation. So this will become y squared plus 2y plus 2 divided by 2 is 1. Squared is still equal to 1. So the right-hand side will become negative 12x minus 25 plus 1. Now, similar to the steps in transforming general to standard in a circle, we are completing the square so that we can have a factored form or a square of a binomial. And in a parabola, we will only be completing the square once, and then we just simply need to get the factors of the variable where we did completing the square. And that is here on y squared plus 2y plus 1. So that will be factored as y plus 1 squared equals, simplify what's on the right-hand side of the equation, which will be negative 12x. And then negative 25 plus 1 is simply equal to negative 24. Now, if you notice, this equation is already somehow similar to the format of a parabola equation that either opens to the right or left. Now, since in this given format or standard form, we need a value for p, we also need to identify what will be the value for p given this equation. So for us to be able to do that one, we proceed to step 5, wherein we're going to perform common factoring to the right-hand side of the equation. So that will be finding the GCF between negative 12 and negative 24 because we want to perform common factoring on the right-hand side of the equation so that we can remove the coefficient. We want to remove the coefficient of x. Why do we want to remove the coefficient of x? Because strictly in the format, there's no coefficient of x. So that will be removed by performing common factor. So what is the GCF between negative 12x minus 24? Definitely that is negative 12. That is the value that we're going to factor out given the equation. On the left-hand side of the equation, we simply copy y plus 1 squared, then equal sign. We factored out negative 12. So what will be the remaining factor? That will be x. And then what will you multiply to negative 12 to get negative 24? That will be positive 2. And obviously, this format is already the same as the standard form given. And since it's already in standard form, we can identify already the orientation or opening of this parabola. And this one is a parabola that opens to the left. Moving on to the next one, it's again another general form. And if you notice, y again is the variable that is squared. So technically, it can either be a parabola that opens to the left or to the right. So similar to the previous example, we start by grouping the terms with the variable that is being squared. So since y is squared, we need to identify a term with the same variable, which is 6y. So let's rearrange the equation in such a way that the y's will be beside each other. So we have y squared plus 6y, And then the rest of the terms will be transposed to the right-hand side of the equation, which is negative 4x and negative 11. Why is that? Because we want to follow the format that only those with variable y should stay on the left-hand side of the equation. So y squared plus 6y will remain on the left-hand side of the equation equals, we now transpose all the terms without variable y. So from negative 4x, that will become positive 4x. From negative 11, that will become positive 11. Then after that, we now perform completing the square on the left-hand side of the equation. So that will be y squared plus 6y. And then applying the formula for completing the square, we are going to add here plus 6 over 2 and then squared. So we copy the first few terms on the right-hand side of the equation. That will be equal to 4x plus 11. And again, do not forget that whatever you add on the left-hand side of the equation should also be adding on the right-hand side of the equation. Then after which your task is to simplify. So for the left-hand side of the equation, that will be y squared plus 6y. Then simplify this. That will be 6 divided by 2 is 3 squared. That will be equal to positive 9. Equals, copy 4x plus 11 and then simplify. That will be also equal to 9. Then after that, we simply need to factor the perfect square trinomial generated after completing the square, which is y squared plus 6y plus 9. The factors will be quantity y plus 3 squared. Equals, simplify the right-hand side of the equation. That will become 4x plus 11 plus 9 is 20. This is almost similar already to the format, but then again, we need to remove the coefficient of x, which is 4. So definitely, we needed to factor out 4. So what will remain inside the equation will be written later on, but let's first copy quantity y plus 3 squared equals, if we want to remove the coefficient of 4, let's factor out 4. Then what's left inside the equation will be x. And then what will you multiply to 4 to get 20? That is positive 5. Therefore, the standard form of the given general form in item number 2 is quantity y plus 3 squared equals 4 times x plus 5. And definitely, it is now on the same format with the given standard form. And since it's already in the standard form, we can verify that this is a parabola that opens to the right. Another example, this time, this is a variable x which is squared. And the format that we're going to follow is that it can either be a parabola that opens upward or downward. So same procedure as the previous two examples. Let's group together all x's. So basically, they are already written beside each other. So what we want to do now is to keep the x's on the left-hand side of the equation, then transpose all terms without x's on the right-hand side of the equation. So we copy 2x squared minus 12x. They will stay on the left-hand side of the equation equals from negative y, that will become positive y. Then from positive 16, this will become negative 16. Now, before we perform completing the square again, we do not want any coefficient with the variable that is squared, which is x. So what we can do here is to simply divide everything by 2. Or another alternative is that we do common factoring. So it's up to you. Let's try an alternate solution. But if you have a different solution, then that will be okay. So what can I do here to eliminate the coefficient of x squared is to divide everything by 2. So that we can remove the coefficient of 2 here. That will be removed. And then this one will simply become negative 6x. Then the rest, we are just simply going to copy. So to answer this one, what's left on the left-hand side of the equation will be x squared minus 6x. The denominator will now be removed. equals, on the right hand side of the equation, this can also be written as y over 2 minus 16 over 2, which when simplified, 16 over 2 will become simply 8. Then since there are no more coefficients on the variable that is squared, we can now perform completing the square. So copy x squared minus 6x. And then what are we going to add? Of course, we follow the formula b over 2 squared. So that will be plus 6 over 2 squared. And again, same procedure. Whatever we add on the left-hand side of the equation, we also add to the right-hand side. So we have y over 2 minus 8. And then what we added on the left-hand side of the equation is plus 6 over 2 squared. So after completing the square, our goal is to simplify. So we have x squared minus 6x. 6 divided by 2 is 3 squared, that is 9, equals y over 2 minus 8 plus 9. After that, we do factoring. So let's factor out x squared minus 6x plus 9. The factors will be x minus 3 squared equals, we have y over 2. Then negative 8 plus 9 is equal to positive 1. Now, since again, we want to remove the coefficient of y, we need to factor out 1/2. Because this equation is also the same as writing it as quantity x minus 3 squared equals 1/2 times y plus 1. So if we want to factor out 1/2, we just simply need to extract it. So the equation will now be on the left-hand side of the equation, x minus 3 squared, and on the right-hand side of the equation, we need to extract or factor out 1/2, so that what's left inside the equation should be quantity y, and what will we multiply to 1/2 to get positive 1? That will be plus 2. So this is now the standard form given the general form.